As summer heats up, so do some of the most troublesome threats to the Great Lakes and their environs. Algae blooms, invasive species, extreme weather events that seem to be increasing in frequency and severity in different ways in each lake. With us now from this year's Great Lakes Economic Forum in Chicago, Illinois, and we will introduce our guests, as is our custom, from furthest away to closest to our studio. There he is in Chicago, Howard Lerner, President and Executive Director of the Environmental Law and Policy Center. In Amherstburg, Ontario, on the shores of the Detroit River, Katie Stamler, water quality scientist and source water protection project manager at the Essex Region Conservation Authority. She's also an adjunct assistant professor at the University of Windsor's Great Lakes Institute for Environmental Research. And in Mississauga, Ontario, near Pearson Airport, on his way to the conference, Patrick Wedase Madabi, former Anishinaabeg Nation Grand Council Chief. And it's great to have you all with us here on TVO tonight. Katie, get us started, please. When we're talking algae bloom, I'm going to assume that some people watching this right now don't know what that is. So tell us what it is and how it's harming the Great Lakes, if you would.
Yeah, for sure. So in Lake Erie and in Lake St. Clair, we have annual harmful algal blooms, and they're an overgrowth of blue-green algae or cyanobacteria. So the species that are blooming currently in both of those lakes is something called Microcystis, and it's a very specific type of blue-green algae. And that particular cyanobacteria can produce a toxin called microcystin. And that's why we're watching it, because, when that stuff blooms and it creates those toxins, it can create a threat to our drinking water and make water unsafe for our pets and animals to drink. We've got several factors that play into that. Climate change is a big one with the warming temperatures and the change in precipitation factors, as well as phosphorus runoff. So phosphorus is the nutrients that feed those algal blooms. So you see a lot of that sort of green area around the shores, and that's what our algal blooms are in those two Great Lakes.
Howard, I gather you're going to be speaking about this at the conference in Chicago, and in particular how it relates to Lake Erie. Focus on that, if you would, for a second. What's your concern about what's taking place in Lake Erie?
Lake Erie is a binational embarrassment in terms of almost every summer there being harmful algae blooms. And Katie described the science very well. The problem is when the microtoxins, in effect, go up, it makes the water dangerous in terms of people's health and animal health and well-being. A lot of people love to spend their time in Lake Erie. It's where we live, where we work, where we play. And when those algae blooms are out there, everybody just says, yuck. It's not a place that's enjoyable for recreation, for kayaking, canoeing, for swimming, for boating. The Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement that Ontario, the states of Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio agreed to was designed to reduce phosphorus, which causes the toxic algae blooms. What the three states in the province need to do is step up together, and all of them are not there yet. They're nowhere close to the goals that they agreed to in the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement, and that means almost every summer we have harmful algae blooms, sometimes worse, sometimes bad, and sometimes not so good. But none of that should be acceptable for the future. We can and should do better than that.
Katie, let me just do a quick follow-up with you, in as much as Lake Erie is a relatively small Great Lake. It's a warm Great Lake, relatively speaking again. I suspect people understand how the algae blooms can happen in that body of water. Lake Superior is very big, and it's very cold, and the algae blooms are happening there. How did it happen there?
That's an excellent question, and there's lots of scientists who are greater than I am that are working on that particular problem. I think it was just a perfect storm of events there, right? You had a really large runoff event, the temperatures were warm enough, and it was a very localized algal bloom. And it happened that one time a couple of years ago, and certainly raised a lot of alarm bells. If this can happen in Lake Superior, where else can it happen? And we look at, there are some inland lakes in northern Ontario that are experiencing harmful algal blooms with that same cyanobacteria. And there's some sort of the latest and coolest science going on is looking not just at phosphorus, which is the thing that we can manage. So that's why we talk about phosphorus so much, because we can reduce the amount of food that we give to the algae. So that's where we put our efforts into trying to reduce that nutrient load. But climate change is really a really big factor for it. So the latest science is looking at the species themselves and how they respond to water temperatures. So that microcystis, the cyanobacteria that's blooming currently, is really good at adapting to those warmer temperatures. So it's doing really well in those warm temperatures and outcompeting the more native diatom type species. So that's why we're seeing that change in the type of algae that's blooming in those temperatures.
All right, Patrick, let me get you into this conversation now. I wonder if you could tell us where your community is and how it's been affected by all of this.
I live on Manitoulin Island, a small First Nation called Ondek-Omnikani. But it's right on the north channel of Lake Huron. And I'm not a scientist, but I have looked at, changes in water for probably close to 65 years. And, I think, the science community has lots of answers about different things that are going on. But I think it's really a lot to do with the pressures of humankind around the lakes. And, you see a large concentration of cottages now. It was mentioned about the phosphorus levels that are being dumped into the rivers, stuff that's now being regulated, but there's been an accumulated impact over many years. I still saw sailboats dumping ballast in bays, 15, 20 years ago, and now it's more regulated now. But you still hear things of, spills, even from on the highways that eventually seep down through the water, into the water systems, through the creeks, off of railway lines. There's just so many factors, high concentration of cottages around the water bodies. And, the septic systems don't necessarily, contain the water. Mother Nature has a good way of, water is powerful. It can move wherever it wants to go. I mean, you can see, if you travel along the highways, you'll see water coming out of a rock face. That's just how powerful water is. So, I think there's a lot of different factors, and a lot of it's accumulated factors over many years. And the weather and nature is about, I think, 6 weeks out of whack, maybe even more, where you see the temperatures are not like they used to be. I'm a guy that likes to fish, and, the water temperatures where, I go fishing are not the same. It's either colder or too warm, and the catch is not the same.
Howard, as you have looked at this issue over, I presume, many decades, can you tell us, I want to get a sense about how bad it is now compared to the worst you've ever seen it. Where are we right now on that?
Well, the worst we ever saw it is about 8 years ago, when the city of Toledo, 500,000 people, water supply was unsafe. So for 72 hours, people in Toledo couldn't drink the local water, and water had to be trucked in by the Army National Guard in the state of Ohio. So that was the peak. That was the worst. And I think that was a call to action for people in the states that we've let this get too bad. We've got to do something about it. But let's look at very quickly the problem and the solution. And Katie and Patrick have described it overall quite right. The problem is phosphorus. And almost all the phosphorus that's getting into Lake Erie is coming from the agricultural sector. So in the state of Ohio, the Ohio EPA says 90% or more of the phosphorus comes from the agricultural sector. That's two places. That's fertilizer runoff from corn and soy fields, and that's manure that's running off from CAFOs. CAFOs, animal operations with 5,000 pigs or hogs or 8,000 cattle, they produce poop. That poop gets collected in a manure pond, and then it gets sprayed and spread on fields. It leaks into the water supply, goes through the Maumee River system, goes into Lake Erie. So when you're dealing with the problem here and you try to craft solutions, the biggest source of phosphorus is agricultural runoff, and that's manure coming from the animal operations, and that's fertilizer coming from the crop fields. And we know what to do about that. We need to reduce it. And what the experts say, the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement says, phosphorus needs to be reduced by 40% by 2025 in order to alleviate harmful algae blooms in 9 out of 10 years.
In which case, how do you do that?
That requires action, and that requires the states and the province to do that together. Because if Ohio, for example, reduces by 40% and Indiana doesn't, or if Ontario does and Michigan doesn't, we'll still have the same problem. We're all in this together, and we need to focus on agricultural runoff manure that's coming from large concentration animal operations and fertilizer runoff. That's the source of the problem. That needs to be where we go for solutions.
All right, we know what needs doing. I guess the question then, Katie, is how do we get there from here? Is there a way to do that?
Sure. There's lots of actions that are already happening. And in Ontario, things are a little bit different. We don't have as many of those CAFOs that they have in the Maumee Basin. So it's more of that row crop agriculture that we see. There's a recent paper by Maren McRae and Kevin King and others that talk about really place-based solutions and looking at the different types of farming and the different type of land that's in each area and finding the right solution for phosphorus reduction in each of those places. So in some places that might be going from a conventional moldboard tilling to going to a no-till or conservation tillage. You might be looking at something like controlled drainage or using cover crops. So there's lots of different agricultural solutions that we can find out there. Some of them require really big investments. We have some cost share programs where we help the farmers with some of those big investments. And really, talking about education and not just with the farmers, because they know this stuff, right? They're not necessarily overutilizing fertilizer. So we have to talk about how do we try to keep that fertilizer on the ground, and they're some of our best advocates for doing that because they don't want to lose it either. So making sure that we've got those programs in place to help them to do that. And I think too, something that I always talk about when I speak with the public or with the youth or with our lifelong learners is showing our respect as individuals for these big actions that need to be taken. So what can we do as individuals as well, right? Looking for those phosphate-free detergents, using water responsibly, fertilizing our own lawns responsibly. We don't need to have the greenest lawn in the neighborhood either. So there's these small actions that we as individuals can take that show respect for those larger actions that we're asking of our farmers and of our municipalities.
Now, Patrick, you told us earlier that you've been watching this subject for going on more than 6 decades now. And I wonder if during the course of that time, you have had to launch legal actions, for example, or have seen legal actions launched in order to make progress on that. What can you tell us on that front?
Well, probably one of the biggest concerns was raised by the elders of the Robinson-Huron Treaty Area, which is the North Shore and Manitoulin Highway 69 corridor First Nations. There's about 21 First Nations in that area. We're very concerned about aerial spraying. The forestry companies are spraying, to limit the growth of the trees that they consider useless because of trying to grow the products that they want. So what happens is that they don't understand that stuff gets into the groundwater. It goes into all the creeks, into the water bodies. A lot of our area is rock formation, so it's very easy for this water to disseminate across a lot of areas. The animals drink the water. We as First Nations, use these animals as part of our livelihood, whether it's birds, whether it's rabbits, whether it's moose or deer. And, we've seen, cancer type things inside the bodies of these animals now. That some of these animals, when you harvest them, you can't even eat them now. And so it's very concerning. They've been trying to raise this with different levels of government. And I really applaud those elders for that fight that's going on. It's an ongoing fight. The forestry companies try to say, and the government tries to say that this stuff is not harmful and it's not put out there in sufficient quantities. But yet, the incidence of cancer is rising. We pick berries, we eat berries, we pick medicines out there on the land. And they don't care about that. They just want to get this stuff. That's what they want.
I take it that was a greenback that you put before the camera there. It was a pretty quick shot. Looked like U.S. currency too, I think. Okay. Howard, I wonder if you could pick up on that and talk about how much success you have seen in the courts in order to make progress on this.
We filed an action in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Ohio, and the state of Ohio has been dragging its heels, and the federal government beginning to do a little better, but still has a long way to go. Look, There's a math problem here that's very straightforward and simple. Ohio's responsible for about 70% of the phosphorus that gets into Lake Erie among the states. Okay, so it's the big dog in terms of the amount of phosphorus pollution. 90% of that pollution, according to the state of Ohio, comes from the agricultural sector. The Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement that the state of Ohio and Indiana and Michigan and the province of Ontario have signed says they have to reduce by 40%. You can't reduce by 40% if you're not reducing from the agricultural sector, which is 90%. You just can't do it. People can clean up their lawns, and that's fine for the other 10%, but you don't get a 40% reduction unless you do two very serious things in the agricultural sector. First, everything Katie's talking about voluntary actions by farmers are good things. Nobody wants to have their arm twisted and broken, but the fact of the matter is, if you have a large cornfield and you're applying fertilizers at a level that too much of it is draining off into the river system, that's creating harmful algae and toxic algae blooms in Lake Erie, you got to reduce that. Because if you don't reduce it, the people there at the end of the line, the folks who are around Lake Erie, which we all love, are dealing with harmful algae blooms every summer. And the second is, we have to stop permitting more CAFOs. The more large animal operations you have with 10,000 cattle, 6,000 hogs, 8,000 chickens, these animals produce poop. It's just part of what they do. And if you have more poop and it gets spread on the fields, it will predictably go into the water system and it will go into Lake Erie. And for the state of Ohio to keep allowing there to be more of these large animal facilities, set aside the animal welfare issues there, which are serious, but they produce more poop and the bad problem gets worse. That requires policy action. It requires regulation. That permitting has to change because voluntary actions won't get us to solutions. All the scientists know that. And unless we're willing to tolerate Lake Erie having harmful algae blooms summer after summer after summer, and all the bad consequences of that, then we need to go to the biggest sources of the problem, which are manure that are coming from the large animal operations and fertilizer runoff, and take serious policy actions to reduce them so we achieve the goal that the 3 states and the provinces signed onto and said they were going to achieve by 2025, reducing phosphorus by 40% in order to begin to clean up Lake Erie. We know what we need to do. The policymakers need to get moving, make the hard actions, and actually do that together. And I get there's a lot of reluctance to do that, but if they want to solve the problem, that's what they have to do. And I think everybody knows that. And it's whether they have the political will and the courage to move forward to do that. Otherwise, we're looking at summer after summer of problems in the way that Patrick and Katie have described it and I've described it. We need to get out of that. And to do that, we need to target our efforts on the places that are causing 90% of the problem.
Well, Katie, let me follow up with you on that. I know you'd like to get on that journey, mostly through education and cooperation. If it can be done that way, that's always preferable. But at the end of the day, is it likely that this basically gets done only by going to court? What's your view?
Well, I have no legal background whatsoever, so I don't necessarily want to get into the legal side of things. But you know, there are lots of ways that we can do this, and our farmers want to do it without having to get to the legal side of things, right? And we can go to companies as well, right? When we look at our fertilizer companies that sell the fertilizer product, when our farmers are going to them with their data and saying, how much fertilizer should I put on? It's part of the responsibility of those fertilizer companies to give them the lower numbers, right? And they want to sell more fertilizer, so they're giving them those higher numbers. Whereas if we use the numbers that OMAFRA provides, which is the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture Rural Affairs, their numbers would be lower. So trying to put the least amount of fertilizer on to still get good yield so that our farmers aren't losing yield is really important. And there's a way to do that. Without having to drop a hammer on our farmers. But do we need to have some stronger legislation? Yes, I think so. And I think that there are some options to do that without really having to drop a hammer on the farmers.
Well, Patrick,
Hey,
our
Steve,
discussion,
If I just might
yeah, go ahead. Howard.
clarify one thing, going to court is the last resort.
Yeah.
What we really hope is that our policymakers and politicians put the right policies into place,
Yes.
whether it's legislation or regulation, so we get progress and we don't have to go to court. Going to court is what you do when nothing else is working.
Gotcha. Our conversation so far has sounded, rather grim, I have to say. And we are, because there are significant issues out there and big problems that need solving. But we don't want this occasion to pass without pointing out that on the 50th anniversary of the Great Lakes Agreement, and I'll bring you in for this, Patrick, there are presumably some things worth celebrating. Presumably. You tell me if I'm wrong. But what would you put on that list, Patrick, of things worth celebrating on this anniversary?
Probably the most significant thing that I'm thinking about is the chance to do better. We've had 50 years, a lot of talk, some action, but not enough action. And the two other guests have highlighted a number of things that could be done, but it's each person's responsibility to look for generations ahead. And unfortunately, the many stakeholders that are receiving economic benefit of this thing are not looking that far ahead. And when you see things happening where overflow of sewage systems in some of these major cities gets dumped into the water systems, and then fast forward a few months later, they're all surprised, there's something going on with the aquatic life in the area. We need some good common sense to be practiced right across the whole Great Lakes area here, because this is one of the largest freshwater bodies in the world, and we're at our own peril here if we don't smarten up, use some good common sense about things. And then we shouldn't have to be going into these forums of the courts. It costs big money. These companies have got so much at stake, they throw all their resources at you. And usually environmental groups and folks like the First Nations, we don't have these types of resources to combat that. So I think people have to take personal responsibility. And there's lots of things that, just individual little practices about, we just use too much water individually. Josephine Mendamenbaugh used to tell us about, even when you turn on the tap to brush your teeth or shave, turn the tap off when you're not using it. How much water do we waste as individuals? And so we got to start thinking consciously about protecting the water.
Well, Patrick, let me follow up with you on this, because we've done a number of programs related to the Great Lakes on this program in the past. And one of the things I think we've all learned is that it is the combination of both rigorous scientific knowledge brought to bear to solve problems, along with what shall we call it, traditional knowledge and historic knowledge provided by Indigenous groups. And together, that's an irresistible combination. Can you tell us more about the latter? What is it that Indigenous people, in terms of their traditional knowledge, can help bring to this challenge to help solve it?
Well, let me point out one thing. First of all, yes, there's lots of traditional knowledge out there, but even our people are thinking about new ways of trying to protect water, and combining some of the modern science with our thinking. But I think a lot of it has to do with the meticulous study that our people do of nature. How many people will go and watch what an ant does for hours at end, to see what it does and what its role in nature is. And if you look at that with the plant life and with all of the aquatic species, the animal life, the bird life, and study that for generations, and that's how you learn. You just don't pick up a book and automatically you have the answer about how to deal with Mother Nature. Mother Nature will always win.
You got two thumbs up from the other guests on the program. I could see them both smiling when you described that. Yes, indeed. Katie, talk to us about conservation authorities. What role do they play in resolving all of this?
Sure. So we're local watershed-based organizations, and our job is really to be on the ground and working with the people. So a lot of us have stewardship programs where we're able to offer those cost share programs to our agricultural community and our rural communities. Things like offering cover crop money to help put in cover crops, doing nutrient management planning, erosion control to help kind of keep the sediment in place. We do tree plantings and wetland restoration projects. All of that stuff is really important to help naturalize the area. We talk about wetlands as nature's kidneys, and they act as that filtration. So making sure that we've got adequate and working wetlands in the area is really important. And we do lots of other things. We're partners right now on two programs. One is provincial called On Farm, and the other one is federal called Living Lab. So we are partners in that, where we're doing actual in-field agricultural research and looking at the runoff from the fields so that we can have a better understanding of how nutrients leave the fields in our very specific areas. So here in Essex, we have flat clay plains versus up in Asawbul and Maitland, where they have more rolling terrain and different types of projects that might happen there. We also sit on local, provincial, national, and international committees where we help to give that sort of local perspective. So I know myself, I sit on lots of international committees because of where I'm situated down here in Amherstburg, which is near Windsor and Detroit. So I spend as much time with my American colleagues as I do with my Canadian colleagues.
Well, let me talk to one of your American colleagues right now. Howard, back over to you. And I want to circle back to that question I asked Patrick a little while ago, which is 50 years on, while we're focused here on the challenges ahead and that you're currently facing, there are presumably some things worth celebrating, such as what, in your view?
Well, there's a lot to celebrate. Patrick's completely right. The Clean Water Act was passed in the United States about 50 years ago, and it's been an enormous success. Anybody who spends their time around the Great Lakes, and the Great Lakes is where we live and we work and we play, has seen the difference. I mean, industrial pollution was going directly through a pipe into Lake Michigan and Lake Erie. That's not happening anymore. At least it's not supposed to be happening. When it does, it's a problem. And there's usually some legal action that gets taken by the regulatory agencies. But we're no longer looking at industrial pollution as a matter of course, running straight into the Great Lakes. We have problems with invasive species, but some of the ones that have been bad problems are getting a little bit under control. So lots of progress. Mercury's being reduced that was getting into the lakes and causing all sorts of problems in the fish that we like to eat. We're making a lot of progress. We have new challenges. Agricultural runoff is increasingly a predominant part of the problem, as all three of us have been talking about. And the explosion of manure. I mean, let's talk about that. You're talking about poop. You're talking about manure going directly into the lakes where people swim, where animals go to lap the waters, where we hang out at the beaches, where people boat and canoe and kayak. And somehow it's become acceptable for there to be more manure created through these large animal operations that predictably get into the lake. That's a growing and emerging problem. We need to do something about it. The good news is that we've looked at the last 50 years, and where there have been problems, we've developed solutions and we've taken actions. Maybe not as quickly as some people would like. And heck, I'm a public interest attorney. We're ambitious. We like to see things happen sooner rather than later. But I'm also an optimist. And what we've seen over the last 50 years is a real qualitative improvement in terms of the quality of the Great Lakes and the rivers and the lakes that surround them. We're getting better, and we need to keep doing that. And we can do that if we all work together.
Patrick, I don't want to be a killjoy here, but the reality is you've got two national governments involved in this. You've got a number of state and provincial governments involved in this, and you have Indigenous or First Nations governments, which are also involved in this. Jurisdictionally speaking, is this too complicated to make progress on?
Well, no, not really. If again, people just use some good common sense. You know, Mother Earth, the water that flows through its veins that keeps us alive, is so crucial to everyone. I don't care if you're the governor of one of the states or a mayor of a large city here. You have to drink water, and the folks that are so short-sighted, they usually don't last long. I think the general public is getting more and more aware. One of the things that's been talked about here is the proliferation of phosphorus and manure in the systems, but also, just the sheer growth of the urban exodus into the outlying territories of the province, and the influx of just so many structures and cottages around is just adding to the impacts and the pressures. So we've got to smarten up a little bit all around. Everybody has to take personal responsibility. I think if we're going to wait for the governments to do anything about it, we've had 50 years of some progress, but the question is, how are we going to do better in the next 50 years and beyond? And it's everyone's responsibility. I don't think we can lay this responsibility on any one or two levels of government. It's every person's responsibility.
That's a good place to leave this, particularly since, Patrick, I don't want you to miss your flight, so we got to let you go so you can get to the airport. I want to thank the three of you for joining us here on TVO tonight. Howard Lerner, Patrick Madabi, Katie Stamler, it's been a great pleasure having you on. Happy 50th anniversary to the Great Lakes Agreement, and 50 more of more progress ahead, we hope. Take care, everybody.
Awesome.
Good to join you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.